In 1916, at the height of World War I, a platoon of 8 German soldiers was cautiously making its way through the forests of Transylvania, Romania. They were seeking a place to rest for the night when they stumbled upon something terrifying. One of the soldiers, Ulrich Meyer, was captured shortly after by the Romanian army. Under questioning, he recounted the horrifying events that had befallen his platoon that night. His testimony was recorded and kept hidden for decades, nearly 80 years, before being released to the public in the last 25. On the file containing his story, the words Mima Pajori were written, referring to what the soldiers had encountered. In German it was called Schleitan de Taude, which translates to creeping death. Ulrich's story, as translated into modern English, begins with fear and confusion. "I don't know what it was," he said, "but someone called it creeping death. We weren't supposed to be in this region. The enemy was close. We'd taken a wrong turn coming out of the mountains, but we were too exhausted, cold, and starving to retrace our steps. We had no choice but to find shelter in or near a nearby town." Under the cover of darkness, the soldiers crept along the outskirts of the town of Brasov. At the edge of the forest, they discovered an old cemetery filled with large crypts. Captain Braun whispered that they should spend the night inside one. It would keep them hidden and warmer than the cold open air. The men exchanged nervous glances. None wanted to stay in a crypt, but facing exhaustion, hunger, and the threat of enemy patrols, it seemed like their only option. They climbed over the 6-foot-high fence in shifts, keeping watch for intruders. As they approached the nearest crypt, grotesque statues of demons loomed on its corners, and a large chain locked its double doors. Someone had scrawled the words Octo and Derisis across them, though none of the soldiers knew Romanian. Lieutenant Klein tried the doorknob, but the crypt was locked tight, secured with a heavy chain. Whoever sealed this place didn't want anyone inside, Ulrich thought. One of the men muttered, "I don't like this. We should go somewhere else." But Captain Braun's response was firm. "Where would we go? We're exhausted, and the enemy could find us." Reluctantly, Lieutenant Klein began working on the hinges, carefully removing the pins with his bayonet. Slowly, with quiet determination, he pried the doors open. A warm, strange-smelling gust of air escaped, carrying with it an unsettling sense of wrongness. The men froze at the threshold, hesitant to enter. Captain Braun finally ordered them inside, and reluctantly, they filed into the dark crypt. Ulrich stepped first, switching on his flashlight. The interior was cold, dark, and empty, yet the oppressive atmosphere made him want to turn and run. On the left side, stairs led down into a lower chamber. A soft whisper behind him said, "We shouldn't be here." Lieutenant Klein quietly closed the crypt door behind them. Captain Braun instructed everyone to check their food supplies and rest as best they could. Ulrich found he had enough rations for only one more day. He lay down on the cold stone floor, his head resting on his pack, and soon drifted into uneasy sleep. Suddenly, a man's voice yelled urgently, calling everyone to the lower chamber. Ulrich jumped up, flashlight in hand, and followed. An eerie chill crept over him as he descended the stairs. Turning a corner, he found all the men gathered around a large coffin. The lid had been opened just enough to reveal its contents. An old woman, but not a dead one. Her face was intact, neither sunken nor decaying, unlike any corpse they had ever seen. The soldiers stood in stunned silence until Captain Braun finally spoke. "This isn't right. Seal the coffin and get upstairs. I don't want anyone else down here." Fear gripped them as they obeyed, covering the lid and retreating to the upper chamber, haunted by what they had seen. Back upstairs, the tension was thick, and no one spoke. Captain Braun ordered everyone to get some rest. They needed to leave before first light and retrace their path through the mountains. Ulrich lay on the cold stone floor, fear and adrenaline surging through him. Sleep came fitfully, broken by the pounding of his own heart. He was jolted awake by a blood-curdling scream from the lower chamber. Everyone leaped to their feet, panic spreading instantly. Captain Braun looked around. "Who's missing?" he demanded. Ulrich's eyes fell on Lieutenant Klein. He was gone. Braun instructed Heinrich and Ulrich to descend the stairs and investigate. The two men exchanged fearful glances, knowing the horrors that awaited below, but they had no choice. Flashlights in hand, they slowly descended. Every step shook Ulrich, his legs trembling and his heart racing. The beam from his flashlight bounced across the stone walls, revealing shadows that seemed alive. At the bottom of the stairs, he took a deep breath and turned the corner, bracing himself. What he saw made his stomach drop. Lieutenant Klein's uniform lay shredded on the cold floor. There was no blood, just the tattered remains of his clothing. Ulrich immediately called out to Captain Braun, who came running with the others. The men froze, staring at the scene. One whispered, "Where the hell is he? That uniform. It looks destroyed." Captain Braun instructed Ulrich to search around the coffin for any sign of Klein, while also retrieving the shredded uniform. With every step, Ulrich's fear mounted. The darkness seemed to press down on him, and a horrifying thought flashed through his mind. Whatever had done this might still be nearby. Finally, he picked up the remains of the uniform, noting the strange, pungent smell that seemed unnatural. Handing it to Captain Braun, they all realized the grim truth. Something in the crypt was not human, and it was hunting them. Captain Braun's voice was sharp. "Everyone upstairs, now! We leave this place immediately!" Without hesitation, the men scrambled upstairs, grabbing their packs and rifles. Ulrich reached the heavy crypt door and tried to push it open quietly, but it wouldn't budge. He whispered to Captain Braun, who instructed Heinrich, the strongest among them, to help. Together, they pushed with all their strength, but the door remained immovable. Panic began to set in, their exhaustion now matched by terror. Suddenly, every flashlight went out at once, plunging the crypt into complete darkness. Seconds later, a horrifying scream erupted from the lower chamber. Shots rang out, rifles firing blindly into the blackness. One of the soldiers shouted, "Who's down there?" Another responded, "I don't know. We have to get out." The room fell silent, broken only by the sound of their pounding hearts. Then came more screams, closer this time, filled with unimaginable pain. One soldier whispered shakily, "This is creeping death. We're all going to die." Ulrich felt sweat pour down his face as his knees buckled. He fumbled for his flashlight. It refused to turn on. In the darkness, he could hear movement, swift and silent, and the panicked grunts of men being dragged away. Ulrich realized, with mounting horror, that he was the last one standing. Trembling uncontrollably, he barely had time to register the cold stone beneath him before something grabbed him with brutal force, lifting him into the air and slamming him against the wall. Pain exploded through his body as he was thrown to the ground. Through his terror, Ulrich watched as the crypt door slowly creaked open, letting sunlight spill in. Before him stood a woman, the same figure from the coffin. Her head turned toward him, eyes glinting with malevolent joy, a wicked smile spreading across her face. In her hands was the decapitated head of Captain Braun. Then, as suddenly as she appeared, she vanished, leaving Ulrich alone in stunned silence. After witnessing the horrifying scene, Ulrich struggled to comprehend what had just happened. When asked later why he had survived, he could only whisper, "I don't know." He had watched the others vanish, taken by a force beyond comprehension, leaving behind only shredded uniforms and abandoned equipment. The creature, the woman from the coffin, had consumed them all. The Romanian soldiers who had later investigated the crypt found exactly what Ulrich had described. Only the torn uniforms and remnants of the men's gear remained. On the doors of the crypt, the words Octo and Derisis were still visible, warning in Romanian, "Do not enter." Locals confirmed the crypt's dark reputation. An elderly woman explained that it had been home to a Mima Pajori for over 100 years, and now, somehow, it had been released. Ulrich Meyer, traumatized by the events, was sent to a Romanian prison camp. Months later, he took his own life. Before doing so, he had scratched the words Schleitan de Tode, creeping death, into the wall with his fingernails, a chilling testament to the horrors he had witnessed. The memory of that night haunted him until his last moments. He never understood why the creature had spared him while consuming the rest of his platoon. Perhaps it had singled him out, or perhaps his survival was simply a cruel twist of fate. The mystery remained unsolved, leaving only fear and unanswered questions. This story, translated from Ulrich's own words, remains one of the most terrifying accounts of supernatural encounters recorded during wartime. It is a chilling reminder that some horrors, ancient and unknown, lie just beyond the edge of human understanding. The events in the crypt left a permanent scar on those who survived, even in memory. Ulrich Meyer's account, filed away for decades, became a chilling record of the unspeakable. The shredded uniforms, the empty crypt, and the words scratched into the walls served as grim proof of the terror that had occurred. No one could explain what had happened, only that the Mima Pajori, the creeping death, had claimed the soldiers one by one. When Ulrich was finally questioned, he described the monstrous force with trembling detail. "It consumed them," he admitted. "Their bodies were gone. Only the uniforms remained. I don't know why it spared me." His testimony conveyed a fear so profound it seemed almost otherworldly. The Romanian army's follow-up investigation found nothing to contradict his story. Locals spoke of the crypt as a cursed place, warning anyone who dared to approach. Months later, in despair and haunted by the horrors he had witnessed, Ulrich ended his life in the prison camp. The words "Schleitan de Taude," etched into the wall with his own fingernails, became his final, desperate message. Those who read it would know only fragments of the terror he endured. The mystery of the crypt remained unresolved, leaving only fear, speculation, and the shredded uniforms of the men who had entered and never returned. The tale of Ulrich Meyer and the Mima Pajori serves as a grim reminder that some horrors are beyond comprehension. Ancient forces, lurking in forgotten corners of the world, may strike without warning, and survival can be as arbitrary as it is terrifying. Even today, the crypt in Transylvania stands silent, a dark monument to a night of creeping death, where men vanished and only shadows and fear remain. The story endures, a warning for anyone who might stumble across what should never be disturbed.